Hello, and welcome to Building Application and Data Resiliency for OpenShift Anywhere. Today's webinar is sponsored by Twilio and Red Hat and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I am excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most of your audio or video or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Next, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources, and I'd especially like to call your attention to a PDF on cloud-native data protection for Red Hat OpenShift in any environment, and a blog entry on how to easily manage and protect your multi-cluster OpenShift environment. There's also a link in there to learn more about the Red Hat and Twilio partnership. Also in there are links to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, which is Actual Tech Media's series of printed resources on technology topics, as well as a link to the ATM Event Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and your colleagues. At the end of this webinar, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can also be found in your handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. To help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. At the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Angela Eichner, who's Emerging Technology Specialist at Red Hat, and we have Stefan Kroll, Global Alliance and Enablement Solution Architect at Twilio. So I'm going to turn things over to Angela to get us started.
Hi, I'm Angela Eichner. I am an OpenShift technical specialist for Red Hat on the Emerging Technology team, and I cover our ISV partners for Red Hat ecosystem. And I'm really excited today to be talking with one of our most awesome partners, Twilio. And we have a very good joint story, and I'm going to open up with a little bit about OpenShift to set the context going forward, and looking forward to talking with everyone else later on in the Q&A. All right, so if you haven't heard of OpenShift, we are an enterprise Kubernetes platform. And what I want to start out with is, really setting some context for this conversation. So over the last few years, we've had a major jump forward in development and how we interact with applications. Cloud has really been the main motivator of that. So back then, we were working with monolithic apps and in a waterfall development methodology. Everything was locked down, proprietary. It was very hard to get any kind of transparency anywhere. And most of the applications were an on-prem, in someone's data center, right? And today, fast forward to today, and what we've realized is modularity is really the key, right? I try to put it together like, if a light bulb is burned out in your house, you're not going to replace the entire electrical system, right? You're just going to change that light bulb. I mean, it's very plug and play kind of modularity that wins. And we also have understood now that, waterfall is just not a good strategy for today's modern application development. We need agile ways of working. We need Teams are global workforce now. We need the ability to interact globally, async. And so Agile is really the de facto standard on development methodology moving forward. And of course, powered by open source, right? So Red Hat is actually the open source enterprise leader. And that's where you see all of the innovation happening within the open source community. And of course, cloud native. I mean, that is where everything is moving forward. And one of the reasons is because cloud native has reset our expectations. So we expect self-service. I want to do everything on my phone when I need to. I want it in real time. I don't need this lag. It needs to be always on, right? So I don't know if you remember, it wasn't all that long ago. It seems like a lifetime ago now, but when Twitter first came out, we would get these fail whales, right? Because the system was overloaded and it just said, we've got a fail whale where we've got too many tweets happening. And now if that happened today, we would lose our mind. We would be like, what do you mean? It's overloaded, So, and the last one is it's got to be easy to use. I mean, easy trumps all, right? So I want to go back though, as companies were moving into the cloud, the promised benefits of the cloud were seemingly endless, right? It was all of this, all of these reasons that you see here on the screen are just a tiny little snippet, but it was kind of promoted as the panacea, the utopian environment for application development and legacy applications. Everything moved to the cloud, right? But what we realized now is that it's a lot harder than everyone thought. And so much so that actually 80% of decision makers have actually moved their applications out of cloud back on-prem. The biggest reason being security issues. And, more than 2/3 of organizations have not actually met the expected cloud benefits. And when we look at some of the reasons that, security is top of mind, all of these things are front burner issues. We're trying to get developers very productive, right? And the traditional solutions of old do not work anymore because they don't provide the developers self-service, and they really need tools and environments enabled to get all of their work done, and especially coming up against all of the deadlines and fast changing requirements. And so, if you're looking at this slide, this is an actual timeline of requesting a developer environment for a VM where the developer actually goes in, emails IT, right? This is, I'm sure, very familiar to everybody. Emails IT for a VM environment, and then it has to go through many, many layers of approval, or there's just backed up. And that kind of waiting, it just doesn't work anymore, because what we really need to do is provide everything at the developers and our IT teams disposal so they can just work uninhibited, right? And so it's, a 2-week lag time or having absolutely everything available ready to go for you. And so there was a huge study done by Accenture, and it was identifying all of the biggest barriers to a well-working cloud environment to actually meet those expectations of the cloud. So it came down to these 3 things: security and compliance risk, cost containment, and skill set. And one of the biggest things, security and compliance risk, right? There are things to consider with cloud where every different cloud has a lot of different compliance and regulatory authorizations, and they're not consistent across the board. So it's a compliance also with all of the different cloud environments. You really need to be on top of where your data sits. Cost containment. So about 80% or so of organizations yearly overshoot their cloud budget, and that number is actually increasing. So there's a real there's a lot of pressure put on budgetary concerns around cloud. And what organizations are starting to realize now is that instead of being, everything all in the cloud, let's be very cloud, instead of cloud first, let's be cloud smart, right? So maybe we don't need to move the very heavy or try to move these heavy monolithic applications in. They might not even be ready for cloud adoption, right? They might need to be refactored or rewritten. And then, cloud environments, the third barrier is the skill set, because the cloud environments are, they feel straightforward, but there's also, with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. And with a misconfig, there can be disastrous results. And so the skill set is something that is very critical, especially as you're getting new people ramped up onto the team. As well, you need to start kind of identifying, okay, if we have very specific cloud environments that are siloed, we're going to have, duplicated teams everywhere. But they're all going to be speaking their own language, because Azure has its own syntax, AWS has its own syntax. Every environment is nuanced and different. And sometimes that context switching is not easy. So what happens, your teams kind of end up being siloed within these cloud environments, right? So, so what's the answer though to fix or to get more of the benefits out of the cloud and out of your existing applications on-prem is Red Hat OpenShift. And the reason that Red Hat OpenShift is the platform of choice is because it's secure by default. Okay, so built from the ground up with RHEL Core OS. Core OS is a container native operating system that Red Hat acquired a few years ago. And we have brought it together on top of SC Linux to provide an environment that is, immutable, it's simplified. It provides an isolated host over the air updates, and it's tested and trusted. RHEL itself is used all over, the most secure environments across the world. Red Hat has a stellar reputation with the security of RHEL built on SC Linux, and this is the foundation of everything. So we've also got, here we go, 100% Kubernetes. Kubernetes is the core of OpenShift, and OpenShift is actually, Red Hat worked with Google the day that Google open sourced Project Borg, which is now we know as Kubernetes. And Red Hat worked with Google and the Kubernetes project out of the gate to make sure that it was not just a beginning open source project, but that we saw the power of this platform. And so we wanted to make sure that enterprises could use it, right? So we go in there and we harden it, and we become big leaders within the working groups and the just making sure that it's hardened so it can be utilized within the enterprise. Then we have built on top of that cluster services. And so all of these components that you see here they're all working together. And what Red Hat does is we have a team that's constantly updating all of those singular components in an integrated fashion. And this is one of the reasons that, OpenShift is so powerful for any environment, right? We have platform services that includes things like, templates, cost management. So this is a big thing where you can actually meet cost control across clouds. It provides everything to manage the platform across all environments. Developer services is key, and this is one of the great places because this is where Twilio fits right into our OpenShift platform. So we have our ecosystem, and our ecosystem works with operators, right? And so it's certified and tested and made sure that it is every release is tested with OpenShift, and you're guaranteed to have a seamless usage with the Twilio operators. So that right there makes up all of Red Hat OpenShift. Now, we also have a couple of additional things that make up the OpenShift Platform Plus, and these things are data foundation, advanced cluster security, Quay, and cluster management. And all of those together create a complete application delivery platform that allows your workloads to be portable across any environment. So again, any application, anywhere, consistently, and consistently is the key target here, because when you're working across different clouds, there are different nuances, right? Sometimes your application will work one way in one cloud and another way in another cloud. So this is where the consistency of OpenShift is really the linchpin to the value prop of working with it as that secured platform everywhere. And so any infrastructure, it's cloud agnostic, hardware agnostic, virtual, physical, where it's a very cool solution. And this is just one of, some of the recognition that we've gotten for our cool solution. And I like to show this slide because it kind of blows people's minds when they see this, and they feel like they are not as familiar with OpenShift as a lot of other companies or organizations or verticals. And so this is just something here that we have put together to illustrate some of the awards and recognition. One of the ones that I really love seeing here is that we won the Best Innovation in Cloud Tools for Developer Week this year for OpenShift Platform Plus. And there's all of these other awards listed in there too. So we do have a number of different offerings with OpenShift. We have cloud, which is, you can self-manage it. You can deploy it to any cloud. We also have SRE managed cloud solutions. So Red Hat OpenShift on Azure, Red Hat OpenShift on AWS, Red Hat OpenShift Service on AWS, that's ROSA, OSD, which is OpenShift Dedicated, that's deployable on Amazon and Google. We have Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud. It's called Roix, and we also have a few more managed services coming out as well. I don't have time to list them all here, but we also have the ability to deploy your OpenShift on-prem in your own data center for some of those bigger or more legacy applications that you're not ready to move into the cloud, or just they don't really fit a cloud profile. So the great thing, moving them in between your environments seamlessly is where you can really start kind of getting the most economy for your applications is one of the best things about OpenShift. And so Twilio is one of our incredible partners, as I mentioned earlier. And what our partnership with Twilio does is it really enables your workloads on OpenShift in with the certified images, right? So if you look in this screenshot here, we probably have more that I didn't even list in here, but there is a lot for all of, a variety of use cases across the board. We've had incredible success with our partner Twilio, and our customers love the joint solution together. It's an incredibly robust solution. And this is a quote actually from the founder and CTO of Twilio. that speaks to the relationship that we have together as partners. And I'll just read it quickly. So, leveraging our long-standing partnership, we've architected Twilio Vault for Kubernetes to offer application-centric backup and disaster recovery with one-click integration into OpenShift Container Platform and OpenShift Container Storage for simplified management that has been certified by Red Hat. And again, that certification is really critical for that seamless experience. So with that, I will pass it over. Thanks very much for allowing me to go into this, and I'll be open to asking questions about OpenShift at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Angela, for the brilliant introduction. And actually, your presentation is an awesome foundation for my presentation. So that makes it very, very easy for me to take over from here for the Twilio part. So my name is Stefan Kroll. I'm a Global and Alliance and Enablement Solution Architect at Twilio. And I would like to talk about the topic OpenShift Anywhere and also Twilio Anywhere, which helps you to protect all of your workloads anywhere where OpenShift is. So let's talk about Twilio Vault in general. So what is actually Twilio Vault? So Twilio Vault is a data protection platform for OpenStack, Kubernetes, and Red Hat virtualization. We are completely agentless. We are doing our job non-disruptive. We are multi-cluster, multi-tenant, self-service, all the things you need these days. We are infinite scalable, but we are scaling with your platform, and we are using an open universal backup schema, which makes it very transparent for you as a customer to see what we have actually backed up. And we are doing this on all CNCF, on all OpenStack platforms, literally everywhere. We are very agnostic when it comes to your platform. So what is actually Twilio Vault for Kubernetes? Because we're talking about OpenShift these days, we're talking about Kubernetes. So our product is application centric. What does that mean? Very, very, long ago, people were backing up config files, copy and pasting it from A to B, and the entire infrastructure underneath has to be exactly the same. It has to be an identical twin to make this backup works. So this is not the case anymore. We have, hundreds of different platforms. They are very unique. And we have to be in the position to be able to back up an entire service, workload, or entire application or application landscape with one click and restored somewhere else on the world on another OpenShift cluster, different region, maybe different storage underneath, completely different, but it's still an OpenShift. So we are able to do this no matter if it's a Helm-based application, an operator-based application, or just deployed via labels, or we can also do namespace or multi-namespace backup and recovery. So very easy, gives from very granular to very overall kind of backup policies. So we can do this on every CNCF compliant Kubernetes platform. So whatever you want to move your application from another platform to OpenShift, you are ready to go. No matter if it's a different storage class underneath, we are more than agnostic to it, so you can move your applications from A to B. We have a lot of opportunities to administrate our solution via multi-cluster UI, if you like, API also, fully blown API, CLI. You can use us in your CI/CD pipeline as well. It's all fully blown. There are no restrictions or limitations on either one of them. We are deployed as an operator as well. As Angela has pointed out, we are on the marketplace. Go on the operator marketplace, type in Twilio, you will find us, click install, and OpenShift is doing the rest for you. It's very, very comfortable. You're just seeing at the end of it, you're seeing an URL. You can go to our UI. You see all the information provided by the installation routine underneath. So very, very helpful. For the guys who are familiar with the CLI, it's actually completely transparent for you. If you're using the OC command line already, it's actually the same because we are an extension to the Kubernetes or OpenShift command line. So if you do OC get pods like you do regular, you can do OC get backups, restores for Twilio. So there's no ramp up phase in terms of learning curves, no training necessary. So when it comes to total cost of ownership for potential customers, you don't need to do a 5 or 10 day training to handle Twilio. That's absolutely not necessary because we are completely cloud native and integrated into the OpenShift ecosystem here. We also offer a variety of tool sets, which gives you basically kind of a DIY store for you guys to do whatever you would like to do to make your backup work on whatever platform or whatever you would like to transform before and after the backup and the restore. There's a lot of tools to do so, and also a lot of integrations like for Prometheus and Grafana or other tools will be provided by us to make you basically give you a kickstart into Twilio, so you don't have to do everything from scratch, so you can fully integrate Twilio right away when Twilio is installed. And if you want to give it a try, we have a 30-day free trial. There are no restrictions. You can use Twilio, every functionality for 30 days as you want to. So, but we talk about Twilio and OpenShift and large scales these days. So let me explain from top to bottom how this actually works. So for example, you have one OpenShift cluster and we have an application running and we back this application up. And there's also some data included, so some PVs. We do this, we do the metadata and also the data backup. We store it safely on a safe place. This could be an NFS or an S3 or anything like this outside of the cluster in a safe place. So if something goes wrong now, something goes sideways, we have to restore something. We could restore the entire application, but we can also do bits and pieces of it, whatever you like, no problem at all. But imagine cluster number 1 is completely down. But you're a smart guy, you have a second cluster somewhere else in the world, and you say, okay, I don't trust cluster number 1 anymore. Something is wrong. I would like to restore all the applications I have on my safe place on cluster number 2. That is absolutely not a big deal. You have your freshly installed OpenShift cluster somewhere, maybe deployed via ACM, for example, and you install Twilio on it. And the only thing you have to remember is, where are my backups? So remember the access and security key from the S3 or the path to the NFS. That's all you need. Install Twilio and give it a target. And Twilio will browse through all this target information and say, hey, I have found 5 different backups here. Would you like to restore them? And from this point on, you could basically recover all your applications right away to your OpenShift cluster number 2. And that's basically it. The bottom line here is Twilio itself is stateless. So you don't need to back up the backup application here. That's not necessary, because everything you need to recover your applications or your namespaces, whatever you have backed up, is lying on that safe target outside of the cluster. So you don't need any configurations of Twilio backed up somewhere. But now going a little bit into this anywhere theme. So as I mentioned before, we not only support OpenShift, we also protect OpenStack and also OpenShift, because some customers, for example, are Red Hat all in and they're using all of these platforms. So we can actually, for example, protect a OpenShift running on OpenStack. We can also protect a OpenShift virtualization. So happy days for Red Hat customers here. And we actually don't mind where it is. Is it on Azure? Is it an instance on Azure, or is it an Arrow service? Is it a Rosa service? Is it on Google or on-premise? Angela pointed out that many people go back to on-premise, no problem at all. We rely on the OpenShift product, and where it is, absolutely fine with that. So from now, we also support or are integrated into the automation tools of Red Hat, like Ansible or the ACM, which is very helpful because we can build on this feature set another nice story, let's say. And I would call it OpenShift Anywhere, Twilio Anywhere. That's the slogan of today, right? So imagine we have OpenShift on a infrastructure, no matter where it is. And we have a lot of containers running, and Twilio is protecting metadata, data protection. And we are leveraging ACM and Ansible to do, for example, use cases like backup and recovery, disaster recovery, application mobility, which is actually all the same, because we're moving applications and services from A to B. It is just the reason which makes it a disaster or a backup or application mobility. Sometimes you just want to ship applications because it's fun. That's actually the same functionality. Also, you can do it for migration reasons, and as well as the other things we support, also ransomware protection, security, encryption, these kind of things which are necessary today. But now coming to a very interesting topic. Remember the days when we talked about pets versus cattle applications, coming from the old days where everybody was treating everything like pets, manual configured, and everything is unique because everybody has done it differently with the same result at the end. And now in the cloud native day, everything is orchestrated, automated, everything is having numbers instead of names, these kind of things. And so we're coming from the Iron Age to the so-called cloud age. And this was meant to be, the focus was meant to be a kind of an application focus. But we are in a different age now because we are talking about clusters. And OpenShift Protected Anywhere with ACM and Twilio in combination gives us the opportunity to have, for example, not only like pet clusters, we could only have cattle clusters because ACM actually automates all of these things. It makes it super easy to deploy all of these things, which gives us as Twilio the opportunity to say, hey, let's leverage this functionality, Ansible in combination with ACM, and do our Twilio portfolio with that, alongside that, which is very, very nice because what we can do with it is we can define policies, and we will see this later in the demo as well. We could define policies saying, whatever cluster you deploy with ACM, please install Twilio with it. Please install a default rule set, for example, with it. Please do this and that. You can basically, the opportunities are endless. You can define based on ACM whatever you like it to do. And this is very nice because there's less risk of doing mistakes from a configuration point of view, but also it can be maybe a temporary cluster for a certain reason. So it's actually a cattle cluster, so to say. And again, no matter where it is, wherever can ACM deploy your clusters will be supported by us as well. And on top of this kind of automated cluster and Twilio spawning everywhere, we can use a functionality we have launched recently is continuous restore. What do? We have a cluster on the left-hand side. As I mentioned before, we store our backups on the target. And what we do is we have a certain new policy saying, okay, this backup will be pre-staged on a variety of clusters, a certain number you have defined, and say, okay, I would like to have my applications pre-staged on 10 different OpenShift clusters all around the world, just in case something goes wrong, because the data is then already there on that cluster. And in case of an emergency, I can immediately spin up my applications there with actually no time. So you reduce the matter of downloading the data, maybe gigabytes of data to that application cluster, by almost 80%, something like that. So very, very, very reduced RTO values here. And we combine that, for example, with ACM. So you can basically go ahead, install a lot of OpenShift clusters with Twilio on top. You can mark them as, for example, a continuous restore target, fully automated with low risk of making any mistakes. So, and we have a lot of new use cases here. For example, what can this continuous restore be used for? For test dev, for data curation, for example, blue-green deployments, for automated disaster recovery, business continuity testings, also for forensic and security testings. If you want to have certain honeypots spread all around the world for a data and analytics companies, for example, there are a lot of use cases there. And we will see this live in action now. So what do we do in this little video? So I show an ACM scenario, as I mentioned before. So let's dive in. So what do? We are labeling a cluster, a OpenShift cluster with a certain label. In this case, this label is called Protected by Twilio Vault. And what does that mean? Every cluster with that label will be basically treated with a certain policy we have defined on the ACM cluster. So we're leveraging the ACM functionalities to do certain jobs based on a rule set, based on a policy, when a certain label is identified on that cluster. So what we do here, we have a cluster called Demo OCP Cluster KubeCon, and we apply the label Protected by Twilio. There's nothing behind yet. It's just labeled. So there's no policy behind. But that's what we do right now. We jump into the governance context, and we create a ACM policy. And in this case, we turn on the YAML, and all of these files, because it's quite quick here, all of these files are on the official Red Hat GitHub, available for you guys to copy and paste and play around with it. So we paste this policy in here, and this policy basically has a routine which says, if I find the protected by Twilio label on the cluster, I will install Twilio on that cluster. So that's actually the bottom line of this one. And in this case, I show the opportunity to say, okay, it's not enforced, so it will not be automatically. It will just inform the ACM cluster operator or administrator, for example, and he can enforce that action manually. There are many options of remediation. One is inform, what I show right here. So you will see in a second, this policy has been created now, and there are 2 cluster violations, which means, hey, I have found that label, and you say you should install Twilio on it, but Twilio is not installed on it. What should I do? And because it's inform and not enforce, we can go ahead and say, okay, I see that Twilio is not installed here, but it should be installed because the policy said so. We can go ahead and say, okay, this policy is not enforced at the minute, but we will enforce it manually. This is, for example, one option. But also you could define in the policy enforce if you like to. It's just for the sake of visibility here. So that's what we do. We say, okay, this cluster has the label. It should install Twilio. Please install that one. And we will see if we jump back onto the actual cluster. So we'll see now in a second that ACM is triggering the policy and Twilio gets installed. And we will see here on that very cluster that Twilio is installing. You see the status is installing. And in a second, we see, yeah, succeeded. So the Twilio is installed on the cluster. It has also as well a license attached to it. So it's basically ready to go with all the operations. So these are basically the steps to create this one. So, and what we do now is, for example, we create another policy. And this policy will be enforced right away. So that's basically the other remediation action you can do. It will be enforced. And what it does is actually every namespace which has a certain label will be backed up automatically. So this is more or less the operations policy. And we will enforce that right away. We will see that in a second. So right now we have a policy. You can copy this policy from the GitHub as well. And for example, if you create automatically or manually a namespace on your OpenShift cluster and tag it with that label, basically, in this case here, namespace protected by TVK, which is Treaty of Kubernetes namespace, backup. So that's the label we have chosen in the policy as well. So if ACM finds that policy, that label attached to a namespace, it will back up that namespace fully automated, which is great, for example, for a company which has hundreds of clusters, small clusters, maybe single node clusters like telco providers have with their satellite edge locations. So you can fully automated do a namespace backup if you label these namespaces accordingly. So you see Twilio is doing the job automatically. It's fully enforced and you are basically protected. That's it for the live demo. And I'm also very happy to get some questions in the Q&A session. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Yeah, so Angela and Stefan, really informative presentations there. And Stefan, really appreciate that demo. Very clear, and it really shows the benefits. And as promised, we do have some questions. Stefan, it looks like this first one is for you. They're wondering, are there any benefits of having Twilio for OpenStack and OpenShift?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So basically, it's always a nice situation if you have one product for two different platforms like OpenStack and OpenShift. It is easier to go, for example, to procurement. You have one vendor of protection, of data protection services in your company. You save a lot of costs and efforts to go out to all of these rounds and finance rounds to figure out what the product is. And also, you can be sure that Twilio is following the same mindset of how to protect applications on OpenStack the same way it does on OpenShift, because it's cloud native. It's the only, as well, especially for Red Hat, it's the only data protection service out there protecting OpenStack, OpenShift virtualization, Red Hat virtualization. So it's basically a one-size-fits-all solution, which makes your life easier. And you can, if you trust us for one product, you also trust us for all the other products as well. And the handling and the learning and trainings is minimized as well, because as I said, the methodology behind Twilio is the same for all of our products.
Okay. All right. Super. Angela, there's one here for you. How's OpenShift different from EKS or AKS?
Sure. Great question. And the main difference is that OpenShift is just like that build-up slide that I showed early in the presentation. Every single component is monitored, maintained, and integrated for you by the Red Hat team. So one of the key differences when you're working in a cloud environment is that the different solutions in Amazon or Microsoft or IBM, they are individual cloud services, right? And so you do have to assign a lot of folks to monitor and maintain and integrate all of those individualized cloud services. Now with OpenShift, it is, integrated for you in a single component. You get single billing. You know exactly what you're going to be paying for. There's not going to be any surprise charges. And you also have the ability to contain the cost with some of our cost monitoring operators and a number of other operators and just systems within Red Hat OpenShift. So, security, I would also say is one of the biggest things. Kubernetes is not easy. It's pretty easy to, stand up a single Kubernetes cluster, but once you are operating at scale, it becomes pretty complicated very fast. And that's why OpenShift is the number one enterprise Kubernetes solution in the world today, because we offload all of that heavy work for you, and the people working on it are, the Kubernetes experts in the industry. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing. Kubernetes can be easily misconfigured. And a lot of companies that have tried to do a lot of DIY Kubernetes have actually come to realize that their teams get underwater with a lot of technical debt just in the constant maintaining and monitoring the individualized components. So the biggest difference is that OpenShift is totally contained, completely integrated, monitored, maintained for you, where you can actually, work on the things that are very important to keep your business running and not become a platform creator like that.
Okay, great breakdown. Appreciate it. Thanks. Stefan, here's a question asking, can we migrate to OpenShift with the help of Twilio Vault running on a completely different hyperscaler and platform?
Yes, sure. Also, great question, because it is actually building on the methodology of Twilio, because Twilio itself, as I mentioned, is fully agnostic to whatever basically comes into your mind, when it comes to hyperscalers, to underlying hardware, storages. The only mandatory piece is it has to be a CNCF compliant platform, which almost 99%. I haven't seen any not compliant with the CNCF. So, and we are built on and the foundation on Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is an abstraction of the hardware layer. So basically, if you have an EKS, AKS, or a GKE, and you want to move to OpenShift, for example, this is absolutely possible because they play all with the CNCF rule set. And no matter if that's storage class A on the one side, or maybe you're using a OCS on OpenShift or something, that's absolutely possible. We can work with them because, as I said before, we built on the abstraction layer of Kubernetes, and it's absolutely possible to move from any of these hyperscalers out there or from your upstream on-premise Kubernetes distribution to OpenShift. Even if it's on-premise, off-premise, it doesn't matter. We can make it work.
Okay. All right. Super. Another question here. This one's about the partnership, so maybe I'll direct this to Angela. And they're wondering, is Red Hat or Twilio responsible for the operator support?
Yeah, so our certified operators are created by our partners. So the Twilio operator, which is certified on top of OpenShift, would be first line of support is Twilio themselves. So there's no bottlenecking there. And of course, with OpenShift, you come to us. We obviously have a very tight relationship with Twilio and all of our partners that provide the certified operators for their customers. So it would be Twilio.
Okay. All right. Super. Well, we've had a ton of questions come in, but we're kind of coming up on time here, so we'll make sure to get all the other questions out to you guys, both at Red Hat and Twilio. So maybe you could follow up with folks on questions we couldn't get to here. But just Stefan, anything you want to recommend as far as next steps for people if they're interested in finding out more about working with you guys and working with this partnership to manage their environments?
Yeah, basically, if you have any detailed questions about what we have presented today or any new features we announce on all the social platforms we have, please feel free to reach out on any of the channels you find, like YouTube or any of our website or something like that. But also reach out to my personal email address, stefan.kroll@twilio.io, if you have any questions, and we can go into the details if you like.
Okay. All right. Super. Well, Angela, Stefan, thank you both so much for coming on and giving us the updates and the demos. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It was a great event. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thank you.
All right. And before we wrap up, we have one more piece of business. It's the Amazon gift card prize drawing, and the winner of that gift card today is Derek Lining from California. So congratulations to Derek. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Twilio and Red Hat for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.